All right, we got one more clip that I want to play that I think really outlines the stakes for that. Well, one is, the just the existence of Donald Trump has meant for specific groups of people in this country, and the implications of Donald Trump winning re-election. I think for some people, it's far more acute than others. And this is the, is he the acting, or is he actually the ICE director? He's probably acting. There is nobody who's been confirmed, I think, for months and months and months. This is Matt Albence. I believe he is the acting ICE director. And the Supreme Court is addressing or about to address the question of whether Donald Trump can reverse the DACA status, essentially, which is, deferred action on children who were brought to this country as minors. They have been living in this country in most cases for at least over 5 years, well over 5 years in most cases, I think. They have gone to high school. They have gotten a degree if they're old enough, or they've served in the military. Many of them they don't speak the language from the country that they came from because they came here at such a young age. Many of them have never been to the country where they were born, and they are living perfectly, perfect lives. They're living just normal lives in this country. Some are super productive, I imagine. Some are just sort of like your average, Jane or Joe or whatever. What difference does it make? And if the Supreme Court decides that Donald Trump has the ability to reverse this deferred action, and remember, all of these people who are in the system now voluntarily came in and gave their information under the promise of this deferred action. Understand, what this is going to do. This is sort of the same dynamic. Listen to what he's arguing here or saying.
Those individuals may have DACA, but that doesn't prevent us from going through the removal process such that the individual at the end of that process, if they get ordered removed and DACA is done away with by the Supreme Court, we could actually effectuate those removal orders.
Yeah, they're planning to deport all these DACA people if they have the opportunity. And aside from the fact that people should understand that these people have been living with this level of insecurity, this intense level of insecurity, never mind, from the time that they realized, many of them didn't even know that they didn't have documents, that they realized that they don't have documents. But also now, since Trump has been in office, the incredible anxiety that they've been dealing with. And remember, these are the people who ICE, we're here to protect you. We're here to protect you from all the gang members and the gang bangers and the drug dealers and the rapists and whatnot. And in fact, what they're talking about is just basically removing, children or formerly children, people who have passed background checks. They have no criminal violations, and
it's ethnic cleansing.
I mean, and it's ethnic cleansing. And remember too, when you talk about going forward in terms of any type of plan to get folks in the system, even to give them citizenship, if this happens now, you would have to be a complete idiot to believe the U.S. government again. It's the same dynamic with foreign powers saying, we're going to get into an agreement with the U.S. government. Because if Obama can be followed with Donald Trump, then, Bernie Sanders can be followed with Tom Cotton.
Well, there's just 2 points I would make. It's
the existence of ICE, which only, as far as I recall, only one presidential candidate is like running on a platform that includes abolishing ICE altogether, not trying to reform it, and that's Bernie Sanders. The existence of ICE is predicated on the belief, that these communities have to be terrorized. That there is this sort of innate criminality within people coming from the global south that requires a organization as brutally terroristic as ICE. Like, it come about people who take children out of like surgery rooms and want to deport them. These are not like good or necessary things that they do. Their main purpose is to terrorize this population, right? And why do they feel the need to terrorize the population? Well, because the people who staff there are bad, but also because there's this underlying mentality as part of our government that we have to terrorize population. ICE is an extreme example of our police state that we have, that governs many communities of color, and they're just a slightly more moderate example of our foreign policy. Like, there is this sort of transit. The treatment of DACA recipients, the treatment of legal and asylum seekers is kind of a canary in the coal mine for the erosion of our civil rights. And it's also, not only is it the canary in the coal mine, it's also the vehicle by which our civil rights are being eroded. And that's why the false divide between foreign policy and domestic policy is just that, it's false. Because we know that, look, the Patriot Act eroded the civil rights of the entire country based on the premise that, well, we got to fight terror, we got to fight them overseas before they come abroad. Like, there's this innate population of Muslims in America who just have the capability to be radicalized inherently by nature of their religion, and so we all have to give up a little bit of our civil rights. And that is not the real danger. The real danger of these groups is like ethnic cleansing and of both at home and abroad. But the danger for the people who feel themselves to be immunized from these groups because they're not in the problematic population is that they don't really realize that one day they will be.
Yes. I mean, it is both the dynamic of they came for the blanks and there was nobody
fascism.
left.
That's why it's called.
But you can see it in the context of now we're going to have immigrants and visa holders. We're going to swab for DNA, pilot program, which, as soon as that program is initiated, it is really just a countdown before that's something like, oh, you want to fly? We get on the airplane. Just let's give us a little bit of DNA. We can make this. You don't have to wait in line anymore. Until everybody gets the DNA. And we just did an interview. I can't even remember. Was that live or pre-taped about the policing force? I mean, it's pre-taped. Specifically, author Stuart Schrader was writing about many of the militarization of the police that we have, and many I don't want to spoiler alert here on anything. But a lot of the things that we rely on that we have now accepted as just sort of like it always been were mechanisms and strategies that were essentially incubated to fight communist insurgencies in the wake of World War II and the beginning of the Cold War, where we sent cops to foreign countries. Then the cops came back here and applied what went over there as policing technology and strategies to inhibit insurgencies, mutated, and then came back here and were reapplied as police.
Yeah, in order to put down labor uprisings, in order to ethnically cleanse the country of Mexicans and Native Americans, going back to the days of catching runaway slaves, like all the most evil purposes you could think of.
This is Jeff. I just want to say this is Jeff Halper's he's the head of Israelis Against Home Demolitions, and this is his whole way of understanding Gaza, is that it's not just that, of course, it's a human rights tragedy, but it's a test template and a microcosm of the North, which is represented by Israel, not geographically, but certainly figuratively, and how it will dominate the South. And literally it's like, oh, there's an incursion in Gaza. It's a new testing of weapon systems, crowd control.
Well, I mean, I would also add, we know they're still. They were using anti-insurgent tactics that were, paid for the war on terror on no DAPO protesters in North Dakota,
including some of the same contractors.
Same contractors, same weapons, same tactics. And so we know that this is just like the testing. Things that are tested overseas will eventually become, part of the policing strategy of the home country. And I would just address what you said about trust. It's like, and then when you don't trust the government, you don't trust the institution of power, you don't trust the police after being routinely whether it's routinely having your trade deals or your treaties with America broken or misapplied, or the police continually abusing the community, that's treated as invalid, right? Especially when it comes to foreign policy, where it's like, if Iran doesn't trust the United States, or they say death to America, or if North Korea doesn't trust the United States or says death to America, or if they try to, God forbid, pursue nuclear weapons, which, obviously no one should have nuclear weapons, but like, it's treated as though that's not legitimate or rational decision being made on their part based on their history of interactions with the United States government. It's treated as though they're behaving irrationally, when in reality, no, like Iran, in some of the cases, North Korea, basically any country that finds themselves being the target of the global north, as Michael was talking about, like, it's in their best interest to take whatever mechanism they can to prevent that from occurring, because we see what happens when they have free reign there. And so, like, it's also, I think moving forward, it's also incumbent upon us to understand that the lack of trust in our institutions from other countries, the lack of trust from marginalized populations in, the government and in the police state, et cetera, is rooted in like a real, history of disenfranchisement that hasn't been accidents too. These aren't accidents. We do stuff on purpose.
It also reminds me of a definition of fascism that I've heard bandied about by Matt Crispin and probably other people too, which is when an empire is failing, usually amid economic crisis, it brings colonial tactics home to the imperial core and uses them on their own population. And I think we've been seeing this happen more and more, really ramping up in the 70s. I'm again, the Daniel Denver book is so good. It's not a coincidence that immigration was criminalized and problematized, starting really with the neoliberal turn, at a time when the powers that be needed a new explanation and a new scapegoat for why they had not delivered on the promises of the American dream. And they blamed it on immigrants. They blamed it on Black people who were migrating from the South to the North. And it was enabled, of course, by racism, which is why it's so important for any socialist movement to be anti-racist if we ever want to get rid of these bourgeois ideologies that divide workers against one another.
Brand.